The Singapore economy will open up step by step once the COVID-19 circuit breaker is eased, with some industries opening up earlier than others. In his May Day message, Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong has also given an assurance the government will help national carrier Singapore Airlines through the crisis as the aviation sector is heavily impacted.
The COVID-19 pandemic has taken a heavy toll on the global economy, with the International Monetary Fund projecting the steepest decline of global gross domestic product since the Great Depression in the 1930s. As an open economy, Singapore has felt the full brunt of the downturn. Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong said although the country is privileged to draw on its national reserves unlike other governments, the road to recovery will not be easy. Despite enhanced support measures from the various budgets, he said it's inevitable that workers will still see a pay cut due to loss of overtime or wage reductions. And to keep industries intact and businesses ready to resume when conditions allow, Mr. Lee highlighted the importance of employers and employees working together.
Workers must accept wage sacrifices to keep businesses going. And employers must make every effort to retain their workers and help them through this difficult period. They should not drop workers at the first sign of trouble. This way, workers will remember and return their kindness, serve loyally, and help their businesses survive. Companies will also be in a better position to rebuild when the economy begins to recover.
Mr. Lee said sectors connecting Singapore to the world and to global supply chains will open up first, while others like entertainment outlets and sports that draw large crowds will have to wait. But some industries, tourism and aviation in particular, are likely to continue to take a hit as travel remains restricted and COVID-19 persists around the world. He said the aviation industry is key to Singapore's role as a global and regional hub, and the government will do all it can to help Singapore Airlines get back on its feet.
As our national carrier, SIA has supported our efforts to fight COVID-19. They help to fly in essential supplies. They have mounted evacuation flights to bring Singaporeans home. But like most other airlines, most SQ flights will remain grounded for some time. All in SIA understand that the airline is facing its biggest crisis ever. And they are all doing their part to help the company survive. The government is determined that SIA will see through this crisis. SIA has always flown Singapore's flag high all over the world and made us proud. We will spare no effort to enable it to do so again.
Well, as mentioned, PM Lee says the road to recovery for Singapore will be long and hard, given significant structural changes to the economy from the coronavirus. Well, he's described the pandemic, the challenge of this generation, and a time for the country to prove it's worthy of its forebears.
The COVID-19 pandemic has hit open and trade-reliant economies like Singapore hard, as it's affected the movement of people and goods and permanently disrupted some industries. But the country, said the Prime Minister, will not falter.
Companies will have to change their business models to survive. Some jobs will simply disappear. And workers in these industries will have to reskill themselves to take up jobs in new sectors. But there will also be new opportunities and new jobs created. We will help companies adapt to this new operating environment and retrain workers for the new jobs available. We will not be able to save every job, but we will look after every worker.
For instance, sectors like biotech and food production are seeing higher demand and hiring more people. The government will retrain workers under Enhanced Skills Future programs. Displaced workers will be trained and matched to new job opportunities. There will also be help to ease the impact on freelancers. Mr. Lee said Singapore is also able to tap on new growth areas globally, given its connectivity and nimbleness as a small and globalized nation. The collaboration between government, employers and unions is also a key factor in the country's ability to overcome economic restructuring.
The tripartite partnership is one important example of how we work together as one nation, protect our vulnerable, and leave no one behind. This is why, when the virus started to spread in other countries, we brought overseas Singaporeans home. We did not leave them to fend for themselves. This is why we care for our migrant workers who have done much for us, as we care for Singaporeans. This is why we have taken unprecedented steps to draw upon our reserves in order to forestall retrenchments and support the low income.
The government has rolled out 3 budgets worth nearly $60 billion within a 9-week period. Still, while Mr. Lee is confident Singapore has what it takes to succeed, he urged the country not to be complacent.
The road to recovery will be long and hard. We should be under no illusion that all will be well the moment the circuit breaker period ends or the number of infections comes down. But we are not a people who will shrink from struggle. It took us blood, sweat, and tears to get here. In the fight for independence, at moments of crisis, the pioneer generation showed their grit and mettle. They decided to give it their all to secure a future for themselves and their children. The Merdeka generation worked with them and took us from third world to first. Because they braved the odds and prevailed, we have today's Singapore. COVID-19 is this generation's challenge. The virus is a tough enemy, invisible, but formidable. It is now our turn to prove that we are worthy of our forebears and up to the challenge before us. And I have every confidence that we will prove more than equal to the task. I wish all Singaporeans a healthy and happy May Day.
Well, Deputy Prime Minister Heng Swee Keat also reiterates that while the government may not be able to save every job, it will take care of every worker. In a May Day message posted on Facebook, Mr. Heng said COVID-19 makes this Labour Day especially significant in marking the determination and solidarity of Singapore's workers. Mr. Heng applauded all workers, including frontline teams and migrant workers, lauding their dedication and tenacity, and even acknowledged the resilience of those whose livelihoods have been affected. Mr. Heng, who's also Finance Minister, described the looming global economic downturn as severe, but said the strength of the tripartite relationship between workers, employers, and the government will help Singapore get through these challenging times. Workers in the transport sector continue to play an important role amid the COVID-19 pandemic. They ensure that ships and planes can unload their cargo and buses continue to run punctually. Transport Minister Kaur said this at a virtual breakfast session with representatives from the sector earlier this evening. About 25 people took part in the half-hour session, including bus captains and foreign workers. Also present are National Transport Workers Union's Executive Secretary Melvin Yong and singer Taufik Batisa. During the session, the workers shared what they do with Mr. Kaur.
Changi Airport may be empty, but actually cargo planes are still very busy. Likewise, the Port of Singapore, from my office, I could see the ships calling at the Pasir Panjang terminal. They bring in very important cargoes for Singaporeans. Buses and trains within Singapore, land transport buses and trains are still running punctually.